Anna Goetz, I wanted to talk to you because we met on Alignable and we talked about how businesses can minimize their liability risk since you're working that field, and a few tips of how they can just avoid landmines they might get into.
Okay, a few things off the top of my head would be around the property themselves, to make sure that your trees are cut back and stuff, so you don't have a branch go through a window or fall on a building after a storm or during a storm. And then to make sure that your fire alarms are in place and working properly, and check your fire extinguishers. Some of them have to be serviced annually in order to have proper coverage for insurance purposes. Also, to service any machinery, depending on what kind of business that you're currently in, there's certain things that need to be serviced. So like a restaurant or a daycare type operation, you want to make sure that you've got your refrigerator units and stuff properly serviced every year. When you have cold weather coming through, to make sure that you're properly securing your building for broken water lines and stuff like that. There's a lot of things you can do to prevent those types of things. Heat tape. There's a foam that you can put around your pipes as well.
Right. The foam wrapping that can
really
really reduce the ability of freezing as well. Yeah.
Yes. And those are really good protective measures. And then for an annual, almost like checkup for your business, you can have somebody come in and take a look at your foundation to make sure that there's no cracks or anything outside. If you have doors or windows that are not opening and closing properly, those are signs that you need to have your foundation looked at and possibly adjusted. And
that's important, because I was just saying, with the foundation, you want to get someone well recommended, because there's also scams in that where they'll go, the people I know will go, that crack can be caulked, that's all you need. And then the less reputable ones will go, well, we have to do a full relift of your whole building. So I think that's an important one. Someone you trust, locally recommended, to know the difference in the two. Excellent.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last thing would be to make sure and check for mold or insect damage, depending on your area. So especially in the South, we have termites and lots of mold because of the moisture. So those are things to look out for as well.
Well, those sound like some real good tips to get started on. And the concept is just training your eyes and ears to look out for things that could cause a problem, stay ahead of them, and also realize, look, just because you have insurance, if you don't do certain things, you may not be qualified as well. You know, I had actually even heard of insurance, making sure, do you need flood insurance? And then I even heard in some higher risk areas, there's insurance for vandalism that some doesn't cover and some does cover. And in fact, someone I knew had insurance. They had a real tough time a little while ago in their town where a lot of buildings were being damaged, and they had special insurance to cover for that.
Yeah, you can get terrorism coverage.
That's what they called it. That was fascinating.
Yeah, if you're in a really high populated, centralized area, that's a good coverage to have, because it protects against the vandalism and the rioting and any damage to human life or property or infrastructure.
Right, because there's a theory that insurance will just cover that. And my experience in the small businesses, the big ones, but the small ones often don't have coverage. So they're just wiped out. And that's an important piece to make sure if you're in a risk or have a concern, just at least find out what it'll cost.
Yeah, and actually the cost for terrorism coverage is pretty minimal. It's just you have to decide whether or not it makes sense in your area.
Yeah. Fascinating. And that probably is that it's called terrorism, but it doesn't have to be officially labeled terrorist. It would be could be vandalism, just a bunch of bad kids that get out of control and decide to tear up your place for some reason. So I see. So that would be an important thing to note. And see, people think about the flood insurance, but this is another aspect to be aware of.
Yeah, and this is for domestic and foreign terrorism. And so anything that puts those things at risk is a good safety measure.
You know, there's another thing I learned recently in my area is that even for lightning and stuff that can damage your equipment, make sure how it's covered. My power company offers a service of, for a charge, putting a lightning arrestor on the incoming line, and that's where the main hits come from. And then they give several $1,000s of electronic coverage if it comes through anyway, which really meets the difference between my deductible on the house as well. So that's another one I've heard of that would be wise to do, because we live on electronics. I had just a power glitch. I work out of a home office here, a power glitch, knock out a $400 router system, because I have a lot of technology and smart home devices that run everything, and it just went off and on and bang. And it's the one I didn't have a UPS on, as well.
Right. And another thing in that area as well is you can get coverage on your insurance for service lines going down, power lines and stuff like that. And if you have a period of time with interrupted service, that it will help cover those costs through your insurance.
Yeah, because I work out of a system where everything runs off of this. We have, even though I'm in the city, we have amazingly unstable power in my area, the lines. So I have a battery, official gas battery backup system, generator running. And then and now I'm starting to put in mini UPSs. So it gives another point where if a surge comes in or it clicks off and on, it doesn't put that pulse through expensive equipment. And they really have come down in cost, because really what you need is something that sees that pulse and just gives an extra barrier between the things. Of course, in amateur radio with license, in amateur radio with my license, that a lightning will jump through anything. So the best protection is unplugging. But we all can't run around and do that.
Right. And the surge protectors that you plug into your outlets in the house can help with that as well. You can just flick them off, or make sure that they're turned on during a major storm to protect your devices.
The other I'll talk a little bit about is just safety in the buildings. I'm a huge advocate that a lot of crime can be reduced just by light coming on. The solar lights that turn on. I have a device that's very popular where when you come up to the house, it actually tracks you. And I had a friend that's an officer that came by to say hello, and he's going, I need to get that for my home, because just that deterrent of seeing the light track you. He goes, that was fantastic. So note that it's coming down. Remote cameras are there. And our biggest thing is when it comes to not just safety and insurance, but also personal safety, is being unattractive to criminals is how I like to work it. I grew up in DC, and how can you be less attractive? Well, lights coming on is certainly less attractive. And then a piece that I've done too is, it's not that I have anything real valuable in the garage. I just don't want them to easily look in to shop. And so you can get,
Right.
that lets in less light, but you can get somebody to put on the something that makes it so you can't easily see in, but it lets in light. Now, I do want to say it cuts down on the light, but that's fine because I just have a bunch of windows there, and it's just like it's more of a chaos, but I just don't want someone to shop easy. So a number of these,
Right.
thinking about them, are, I think, very important for a business that has a brick and mortar location. Now, if you heard of
Yes.
something, apparently there's been problems where they'll steal the copper out of heating and air conditioning devices. That's another vulnerable spot. Now, in my case, I have cameras on them, so I know immediately if someone's near it. But, one is either modifying that to have cameras as well on them. But I've also seen sometimes where they're in a higher risk area where they might build a cage around it. Do you have any comments with that?
Yeah. It would be a good deterrent, even if it had a little fenced in cage with a padlock on it, even would be a good way to keep them from going in there, or at least slow them down a little bit.
Yeah. And the other thing is the importance of just having good combination locks on things so you don't get someone that gets in there and they could just be messing around and get injured, and then you have a liability risk on your hands.
Yeah, true story. And as far as the cameras go, it might be a good idea, even if you lived in a rural area, to have the wildlife cameras.
Yep.
Especially if they've got a flash on them.
Yeah.
Because if somebody realizes that a flash just went off, they're going to leave.
Yeah, I know someone who has property in a rural area, and their problem is that people come on who shouldn't be hunting there because it's near and they'll have a system using a cellular system too, and that notifies them if they want it. So there are people don't realize these devices have truly come down in cost. And then even alarm systems versus passive versus active, where they'll turn on and be able to speak to the person, because if they can verify they hear a voice, some areas will respond quicker than others. So you want to find out with the local police department, hey, what gets me a higher priority if something's going on at my business? And they're usually very glad to tell you that.
Yeah, that's true.
There are also some tools that will give you an idea of levels of crime in your area, that if I find one of those, I'll put it in the chat, where you can get a crime map. I'm the one that watches it in the household. I don't want to unnecessarily startle people, but since I grew up in the city, I'm comfortable to check. I go, okay, there's just normal crime in these areas. It hasn't merged or changed too quickly, so you can get updates. And sometimes they'll offer that as well, so you get it. I do want to add one more thing. In my area, there's something called Next Door, and that's, to me, a neighborhood watch program that's driven by ads that people pay for. Do you have Next Door in your area?
No.
Okay.
We're really rural where we're at, so it's not here yet.
Right.
It's in some of the surrounding zip codes, but not here yet.
You might be the local champion to start it. I actually was the first in my neighborhood, even in the city here. But
yeah, I have looked into it. I just haven't made the plunge.
Well, what I like about it is, first of all, often I'll get more information on what's going on in my community from it than I will the news, because the news has to set priorities. They have some accountability to the people who pay for their ads, and they're mixing in national news. So that's been useful. What I'd say on something like that is, even is businesses now can list in there. So you could be on personally for watching out for an area, but you can also get a business listing on it as well. So it has the value. And then, of course, for just learning about tips on education, Alignable's another great one that we're both on and advocates of. And that's, to me, the real networking, because there could be a question of crime building up in an area and a business could ask, and other businesses can help them out to let them know what's going on. So even though Alignable is a networking tool, it's also a way to build connections with other businesses, to personally talk to them and say, hey, what's going on in this area? How is it changing? Because, we could spend infinite money trying to be protected. So we have to make a value judgment of what's the level of insurance, what the level of protection we need for our particular business.
Yeah, that's true. And I also recommend finding an independent agent that can help you look over your stuff and ask them questions and get several different quotes from several different carriers, because that's what they do.
Yeah, I've always preferred, if I could, work with an independent agent that works with several different services, because I feel there's a referred independent agents is in fact, that's who I have now. And I, like you said, look, you got a problem, my cell phone, where I live, and you won't get that from the bigger single lines, but they can be well recommended too. So you're right, get good contacts, understand and find out who they are to get this stuff assessed, and then make your decision what level you need for minimizing liability risk. One more thing I want to throw in safety in the business is the importance of having policies for employees online. Now, you might want to run this by an attorney, because there's certain things you can ask of employees and certain you can, but it's a lot easier to have an agreement when you sit down with them than try to impose it later. So even in my social media management marketing training we have at State, we say, get your policies together, get some examples really, and then run it by your attorney to go, am I asking outside the bounds of what I can ask or not? So that they know the rules, because don't assume common sense is the same for everyone. And it's not that people don't have common sense. I've traveled around the world, and it's relative to culture and community.
Yeah, and on that same note, in the business owner's policies, you can get coverage for employee dishonesty. That if one of your employees does something that is against your rules and regulations, the insurance will help cover the costs of recovering whatever you need to recover. And also, some of that's covered in cyber coverage as well, which is new and up and coming, but a lot of people aren't really aware of what it can do to protect you on the electronic end of things, the technology side of it.
That's so important, because I've worked with some CPAs, and if they buy a practice or something and they lose some of their clients' documents, the fines are insane they can be facing. And it could have been safe for, quote, 20 years when they bought the practice, but they didn't have some way of setting it up so they could secure it. So I think this is an important thing as well, is this idea of cybersecurity, because we all know that, what is it, like 90% of people who rob a physical bank don't get away with it. 90% that do the equivalent online get away with it. Could you talk about anything about related to what that is, the cybersecurity insurance? Because that's going to become bigger. Locking out machines, you want to have all your virus updated and have a system that manages it.
On the cyber coverage, we've got a new carrier that has the most extensive cyber package I've ever seen. And they cover hackers, they cover online theft, online identity, and the list goes on and on. It's incredible what they can cover for a business as far as online protection. And then also you get to choose the levels of how quickly you want them to respond to an online attack, whether it's 6 hours, 12 hours, or 24 hours. And that allows them to do what they need to do to figure out where it's coming from and do the research in order to get it stopped. So it's a really important tool. And on the data that you were just talking about, if somebody bought a company and something had happened previously within that company, they can also get electronic data and important papers and documents coverage on their regular policy for business owners. So that would be a good way to go there as well. There's a lot of add-ons for business owners.
Yeah, because we do live in a world where digital crime seems to be just going through the roof. Now, I think if you had a major oil transfer service, you probably want to have the premium of that hack service. So if it gets like we had a while ago where the pipeline was hacked into with I would want pretty fast turnaround. I wonder if I don't know the story on it, but I wonder if they had insurance on that or not. They definitely
I would
probably,
hope so.
Yeah, they probably were not updating things very regularly. So those high target areas. So the thing is I think the key is talking to someone, at least know what the liability risk. Don't just assume you're aware of it. Kind of scouting it out. It's a little easier for me because I did grow up in Washington, and I would go in our front door and lock the door immediately. I one time was in a friend's house in South Carolina. I went in his door and locked his door, and then I heard a big thump because he slammed into his own door because no one had ever locked his door. So kind of one advantage of growing up in a large city is I get in the car and I lock it. I notice where I'm going. I don't, I wouldn't there. We've got an area where we've got in Raleigh a huge surge in pickpocketing, and it's a large number of people that go down and party. And I can just, when I'm down there, I see people walking like this. I don't know how they can see where the curb is, but I'm going, you're just like, you might as well just have a little sign that says, please rob me, I'm not paying attention. So,
right.
These, we don't want to get away from these. We need to, I have the advantage of being aware of it. And, but some people grew up where it was just so safe, they weren't aware, and they might move into a new location.
Yeah, that's true too. And it's really important to be aware of your surroundings. And that was even more enhanced for me as a Tai Chi student and instructor. So it definitely makes you aware of what's going on because you're more aware of what's going on with you.
Well, I want to wrap up with tell people thanks for coming on. I just want to have a discussion going on this. I invite anyone see other resources, put them in the chat, but I hadn't really done a show just talking about liability risks for businesses. And so would you be kind enough to tell people what you offer and how they can learn more about you?
Sure. We're Gets to You Insurance. We do personal insurance in 7 states now. Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Kansas, and Idaho. But we can do commercial insurance depending on your needs and stuff in all 50 states. And it varies depending on whether or not we can do anything for you, but we can definitely answer any questions. And if we don't know, we will research it for you or find someone else that can help you in your area.
That's excellent. And then again, we met on Alignable, the small business networking site. And it's really about building alliances, getting to know other business, and I don't know quite any other that works quite the same way. So I'll make sure to also put your alignable profile in the text below so they can check that out. But this was a lot of fun. We got it. I hope people who listened really learned something, or at least got them to think, to double check some things. It's better to at least check it out and be informed and decide if you're willing to do something or not, than get hit broadside and not even think about it before it occurs.
Yes, true story. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is a lot of fun. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.